Hey guys, tonight we begin with something a little unusual. A time of ice, isolation, and incredible adaptation. We're diving into what life was really like for the Inuit people surviving in the harshest conditions on Earth. Forget the romanticized igloo life you might have seen in documentaries. The truth is, you probably wouldn't last a single day eating completely frozen food at temperatures as low as 84 degrees Celsius. And I'll explain why today. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're hearing this from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to me seeing who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background noise, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations! You've just woken up in a traditional Inuit settlement centuries ago. The good news is you're alive. The bad news: the temperature outside is 60 degrees and dropping. Your shelter is made of snow and ice. Your bed is animal furs layered on a sleeping platform of snow. There's no memory foam, no. Your body heat has slightly melted and refrozen the snow beneath you during the night, creating a surface that conforms perfectly to your body. The air inside your shelter is quiet, still, and cold enough to see your breath forming small clouds. With each exhalation, it's neither comfortable nor uncomfortable. It simply is. The first thing you notice is the hunger. Not a sharp, painful hunger like you might feel after skipping a meal in the modern world. This is a constant, dull presence that lives in your body like a quiet neighbor. You've grown accustomed to it. Your stomach doesn't growl anymore. It waits. Food is not something you eat 3 times a day with snacks in between. Food is something you find, hunt, prepare, and consume when it's available. Sometimes that means eating once a day. Sometimes it means not eating for several days. Your body has adapted to this rhythm like it has adapted to the cold. It doesn't fight against these conditions. It accepts them. You rise from your sleeping platform and reach for your clothing. Each piece is designed with purpose, layers of animal skins and furs that trap heat close to your body. The innermost layer touches your skin. Soft caribou fur with the hair facing inward. The middle layer is also caribou but with the hair facing outward. The outer layer is seal skin, waterproof and durable. These clothes weren't mass-produced in a factory. They were made by hand by members of your community, using techniques passed down through countless generations. The stitching is done with sinew thread, the seams carefully aligned to keep wind and moisture out. Your mittens have separate chambers for your thumb and 4 fingers together, because separating each finger would expose more surface area to the cold. Your boots are made from sealskin with the fur removed, lined with grass insulation that can be changed when it gets damp. These aren't fashion choices. They are survival tools. You step outside your shelter into the vast whiteness. The cold hits your exposed face like a physical force, instantly numbing your cheeks and freezing the moisture around your eyes. You don't wince or complain. This is simply what air feels like here. The landscape stretches endlessly in all directions. A blank canvas of white and gray, broken only by the occasional dark shape of a rock or the subtle contours of snowdrifts. The sky above is pale and vast. There are no trees, no buildings, no power lines to interrupt the horizon. Just ice, snow, and sky extending to the very edge of sight. There is a beauty here, but you don't remark on it. This is not beautiful or ugly. It is home. Your community is spread out around you. Other shelters made of snow or animal skins or driftwood, depending on what materials were available when they were built. People move between them with purpose, their movements economical and precise. No energy is wasted here. Every action serves a function. Children help with chores from a young age, not because of strict parenting, but because survival requires everyone's contribution. There are no idle hands in this place where idleness can mean death. Today, you will eat. The hunters returned yesterday with a seal, and the community has been preparing it. Nothing is wasted. The meat is for eating. The blubber for oil to light lamps and provide heat. The skin for clothing and boat covers. The bones for tools. Even the intestines will become waterproof clothing. This efficiency isn't environmentalism, as you might understand it in the modern world. It's necessity. There are no grocery stores here, no Amazon deliveries, no restaurants with takeout options. Everything you consume must be hunted, gathered, or traded for with other communities. You might encounter during the year. The meat from the seal has been butchered, and some of it is being prepared for immediate consumption. But much of it will be stored for later use, and this is where the frozen food practices begin. You watch as portions of the seal are placed outside to freeze solid in the intense cold. This isn't a cooking technique, it's preservation. In this environment, refrigeration isn't technology, it's reality. The ground beneath your feet, the air around you, even the walls of your shelter are all cold enough to keep food frozen indefinitely. This isn't a choice, it's the only option available. You are handed a piece of this frozen meat. It's rock hard and impossibly cold, but you don't hesitate. You place it in your mouth and begin to slowly warm it with your body heat. Just enough to slice away a small piece with your front teeth. You don't fully thaw it. That would waste precious body heat and risk spoilage of any leftover portions. Instead, you shave off paper-thin slices that melt in your mouth. This technique isn't a cultural preference or a culinary tradition. It's physics and biology working together to keep you alive. The taste is strong, rich, gamey, with the metallic hint of blood. There is no seasoning beyond the natural flavor of the animal and perhaps a hint of the sea where it lived. You don't judge this taste as good or bad. It is simply food. Your body recognizes it as nutrition, as energy, as life. The frozen state preserves not just the meat itself, but also its nutritional value. Vitamins that would be destroyed by cooking remain intact. This isn't gourmet dining. It's nutritional science practiced long before scientists had names for vitamins C, D, or B12. As you eat, you think about the hunts that will come in the following days. Hunting here isn't a sport or a hobby. It's the foundation of existence. The techniques have been refined over thousands of years, passed from one generation to the next not through textbooks or YouTube tutorials, but through direct observation and participation. Children as young as 6 or 7 begin learning to hunt by watching, then by helping with small tasks, then by practicing with miniature versions of the tools adults use. By the time they reach adolescence, they have absorbed knowledge that no university could provide. How to read weather patterns in the sky, how to track animals across seemingly featureless terrain, how to wait with infinite patience for the right moment to strike. The weapons and tools used for these hunts are masterpieces of engineering, designed with intimate knowledge of local materials and conditions. Harpoons with detachable heads that turn sideways under the skin of a seal to prevent it from escaping. Spears balanced perfectly for throwing across ice. Snow goggles carved from bone with narrow slits that protect eyes from snow blindness without restricting vision. None of these items were designed by committees or focus tested with consumers. They evolved through generations of use in the most unforgiving testing grounds on Earth. Your meal continues slowly. There is no rush here. Rushing consumes energy, and energy is the most precious resource you have. Each bite is small, deliberate, efficient. You don't take more than you need because excess consumption today might mean shortage tomorrow. The community shares everything, not because of political ideology, but because individual hoarding would threaten everyone's survival. If one person claimed a whole seal for themselves, others would go hungry. If someone refused to share their skills or labor, the entire group would be weakened. Sharing isn't charity, it's strategy. After eating, you join others in processing more of the seal. The blubber is being rendered into oil that will fuel the soapstone lamps that provide both light and heat inside the shelters. These lamps aren't decorative or atmospheric. They are technological innovations that make life possible in this environment. The design is simple. A shallow dish carved from soft stone, filled with oil, with a wick made from Arctic cotton grass or moss. The flame is controlled by adjusting the position of the wick, allowing for precise regulation of heat and light. This isn't mood lighting, it's climate control in its most essential form. The temperature continues to drop as the day progresses. The cold has personality here. It changes, shifts, intensifies. At 60 degrees, exposed skin can freeze in less than a minute. At 70 degrees, your breath freezes instantly, creating a soft crackling sound with each exhalation. At 80 degrees, the air itself seems to become solid, pressing against your body like a physical weight. You don't complain about these temperatures or remark on how extreme they are. They are simply the conditions within which you exist. Evening approaches, not with the dramatic sunset you might see in more temperate climates, but with a gradual diminishing of the already muted light. Inside your shelter, the lamp burns steadily, creating a small bubble of survivable conditions within the vastness of the cold. You prepare for another meal, this time a mixture of frozen meat and blubber called pemmican. The fat content is incredibly high by modern dietary standards, but here it's essential. Your body needs those calories to generate heat during the long, cold night ahead. Again, you eat this food in its frozen state. The fat is easier to consume this way than the lean meat. It shaves off in small pieces that melt quickly in your mouth, releasing dense calories. You don't think about fat content or nutritional breakdowns. You simply know that this food keeps you warm, keeps you strong, keeps you alive. The flavors are direct and unaltered. There are no herbs or spices here, no cooking techniques to transform the original taste. Just the pure essence of the animal, preserved by the cold. As you eat, others around you do the same. Conversation is minimal. Not because of social awkwardness, but because unnecessary talking uses energy and creates moisture that will freeze on your clothing. The silence isn't uncomfortable or lonely. It's practical. When people do speak, their words are measured and purposeful. Stories are told, but they serve functions beyond entertainment. They contain navigational knowledge, hunting strategies, weather prediction techniques. Nothing is frivolous here. Everything carries weight. Sleep will come soon. Your body is tired from the constant work of staying warm, of moving through this environment, of processing food that requires effort to consume. You don't set an alarm or worry about getting 8 hours. Your sleeping patterns follow the rhythms of light and dark, of energy and exhaustion. Sometimes you sleep for 4 hours, sometimes for 12. Sometimes you wake in what would be the middle of the night in other places because a hunting opportunity has presented itself. Sleep isn't a scheduled activity. It's a resource you draw upon when needed and abandon when necessary. The next morning brings similar temperatures but different activities. Today, you will ice fish, cutting a hole through thick ice and patiently waiting for movement below. The fishing equipment is deceptively simple. A line made from braided sinew, hooks carved from bone, bait taken from the stomach contents of previously caught fish because nothing is wasted here. You don't cast and reel as you might with modern fishing gear. You remain absolutely still, feeling for the subtlest vibration that indicates a fish has found your bait. This isn't a weekend hobby. It's a concentrated exercise in patience and precision. When you catch a fish, you eat some of it immediately. Raw, frozen fish might seem unappetizing or even dangerous in other contexts, but here it's a precious source of nutrition. The freezing. Temperatures kill any parasites that might be present, making it safe to consume without cooking. You don't worry about food poisoning or bacterial contamination. The extreme cold is your food safety system, more reliable than any refrigerator or freezer in the modern world. The process repeats day after day, season after season. You hunt, you gather, you eat, you sleep. The foods change with availability. Sometimes seal, sometimes fish, sometimes caribou or muskox if the hunting is good. Sometimes birds and their eggs during brief periods when they migrate through the area. Sometimes berries and plants during the very short growing season. But always, the consumption method remains similar. Foods are often eaten in their frozen state because that's the natural condition in which they exist here. This practice of eating frozen food isn't a cultural quirk or a culinary tradition. It's a direct adaptation to an environment where temperatures regularly reach 60 degrees, 70 degrees, even 80 degrees. At these temperatures, cooking food requires precious fuel that might be better used for heat or light. Thawing food completely wastes body energy that is needed for survival. The practice developed not by choice, but through necessity, through the cold logic of what works and what doesn't in this place where mistakes can be fatal. Over generations, the Inuit body has adapted to this diet in remarkable ways. They're metabolic. Systems process the high-fat content efficiently, using it to maintain body temperature in the extreme cold. Their digestive enzymes are particularly effective at breaking down proteins in their raw state. Even their blood circulation has adapted, allowing for better retention of heat in the extremities. These aren't lifestyle choices. They're evolutionary responses to one of the most challenging environments on Earth. You don't think about these adaptations as you continue your day. You don't marvel at the ingenuity of eating frozen meat or the resilience it takes to thrive in these conditions. This isn't extraordinary to you. It's normal. This isn't survival against the elements. It's simply living within them. The cold isn't your enemy. It's your context. The frozen food isn't a hardship. It's sustenance. As another day ends, you return to your shelter with a small portion of frozen fish. Tomorrow will bring similar activities, similar meals, similar temperatures. There is a certainty to this existence. Not the certainty of comfort or ease, but the certainty of knowing precisely what needs to be done to see another dawn. Eat, conserve energy. Maintain your gear. Hunt when possible. Share with your community. These aren't philosophical principles. They're the practical foundations of life. You sleep and wake and eat more frozen food and work and sleep again. The cycle continues, without drama or complaint. This is simply how things are done in a place where the cold is so profound that it shapes every aspect of human activity. The frozen food you consume isn't a dietary restriction or a cultural preference. It's a logical response to the reality of 84 degrees. Days blend into weeks, weeks into months, months into seasons. The rhythm of life continues unchanged for generations. Knowledge accumulates slowly, each small innovation tested against the unforgiving standards of the Arctic. A slightly better way to cut blubber, a more efficient method for scraping hides, a modification to clothing that preserves heat more effectively. None of these changes are revolutionary. They're incremental improvements to a system that works because it must. The practice of eating frozen food persists through these generations, not because of tradition or habit, but because the conditions that necessitated it remain unchanged. The temperature still drops to 84 degrees. The need for efficient calorie consumption still exists. The practicality of consuming food in the state in which it naturally exists still makes sense. This isn't resistance to change. It's recognition that some solutions remain valid regardless of time passing. You continue to eat your frozen meat and fish and blubber. You continue to hunt and fish and prepare food for storage. You continue to wear your layered clothing and live in your shelter designed to preserve heat. You continue to share resources with your community and pass knowledge to younger generations. This isn't stagnation. It's sustainability in its most fundamental form. The skills required to live this way are complex and numerous. Reading weather conditions by observing cloud patterns, wind direction, the behavior of animals. Navigating across seemingly identical stretches of snow and ice by memorizing subtle landmarks or using the stars. Recognizing the sound of safe ice versus ice that might break under your weight. Building shelters from snow that insulate rather than conduct cold. These aren't hobbies or interests. They're the essential knowledge base that keeps you alive. Your diet of frozen food supports these activities by providing the necessary nutrition with minimal energy expenditure. The raw, frozen state preserves vitamins that would be destroyed. By cooking, the high-fat content provides the calories needed to maintain body temperature. The protein builds and repairs muscle used for hunting and travel. This isn't a dietary choice based on preference or belief. It's nutritional science practiced through observation and necessity. Another day dawns, indistinguishable from the one before, except perhaps for subtle changes in wind direction or cloud cover that only experienced eyes would notice. You emerge from your shelter and immediately read these signs, adjusting your plans accordingly. If a storm is coming, you might hunt close to home or focus on preserving existing food supplies. If conditions are favorable, you might travel further or attempt to hunt larger game. These aren't arbitrary decisions. They're calculated responses to environmental cues. The frozen food you eat fuels these activities. The seal meat from yesterday, still frozen solid, provides sustained energy. You don't think about calories or nutrition. You simply know that this food keeps you strong enough to continue. The process of eating it, shaving off small pieces with your teeth, warming just enough in your mouth to consume it, has become so natural that you don't give it any thought. This isn't a technique you learned from a book or a video. It's knowledge absorbed through observation and practice from earliest childhood. Your community functions around you, each person contributing according to their abilities. Elders who can no longer hunt might repair tools or watch children. Those with particularly good eyesight might spot game at great distances. Those with steady hands might excel at delicate stitching needed for waterproof clothing. This isn't division of labor as an economic theory. It's practical allocation of human resources for collective survival. The food. Preparation and consumption practices reflect this community approach. When a large animal is caught, the entire group works together to process it. Some cut meat, some scrape hides, some prepare storage areas. The distribution follows customs, developed over generations to ensure everyone receives what they need. This isn't socialism or capitalism, it's survival economics in its purest form. The practice of eating frozen food fits seamlessly into this system. It requires no cooking, fuel, which would be precious and limited. It preserves nutritional value without technology. It allows for food to be stored indefinitely in the natural freezer that is the Arctic environment. This isn't a quaint tradition maintained for cultural reasons. It's a practical solution to the challenges of obtaining adequate nutrition in one of the most resource-scarce environments on Earth. Evening arrives again, and with it another meal of frozen meat. The temperature has dropped further, now approaching 80 degrees. At this temperature, even breathing requires technique. Inhaling through the nose to warm the air slightly before it reaches your lungs, exhaling through a mouth partially covered by fur to prevent freezing the moisture in your breath. You don't complain about this inconvenience. It's simply what breathing involves in these conditions. The frozen food you consume provides the energy needed to maintain your body temperature through the night. Without the high calorie content, particularly from fat, your internal systems would struggle to generate enough heat. This isn't dietary indulgence, it's thermal necessity. Your body burns these calories not for movement or growth primarily, but for the constant work of keeping your core temperature at 98.6 degrees, while the air around you is 80 degrees. That 179-degree difference represents the ongoing work your body performs every minute of every day. Sleep comes again, your body exhausted, from this constant thermal regulation. The frozen food you consumed slowly releases its energy as your digestive system processes it through the night. This isn't just eating, it's fueling the ongoing process of existing in conditions humans weren't originally designed to inhabit. Your adaptations, both biological and behavioral, make it possible to sleep soundly even as the temperature continues to drop outside. Morning brings a new challenge. A hunting party is forming to pursue a group of caribou spotted in the distance. You join because your community needs the meat, the hides, the bones, the sinew. Every part of these animals will be used. The hunt might take days, requiring you to travel far from your settlement. You prepare by eating more frozen meat, the sustenance that will power your journey. You don't pack elaborate meals or cooking. Equipment, you take what you can carry and rely on hunting along the way. The hunting party moves across the ice and snow with practiced efficiency. No one speaks unnecessarily. No one takes risks that might threaten the group. The movements are coordinated without obvious signals or commands because everyone understands their role. This isn't teamwork as a corporate value, it's coordinated action developed through shared necessity. When the caribou are finally spotted, the approach is methodical and patient. Hours might pass as hunters move into position, using every feature of the terrain for concealment. There is no rush, no excitement, no tension. This isn't sport hunting. It's procurement of essential resources. The emotional state of the hunters is calm, focused, present. This isn't mindfulness as a wellness practice. It's the mental state required for successful hunting in extreme conditions. The hunt succeeds, and several caribou are taken. Immediately, the work of processing begins. Even in temperatures approaching 75 degrees, hands work quickly and skillfully to skin and butcher the animals. Blood freezes almost instantly upon exposure to air, creating strange crystalline patterns on the snow. Some of the meat is consumed immediately. Frozen, of course, shaved into thin slices that can be eaten without cooking. This isn't a celebration meal. It's replenishment of energy expended during the hunt. The remainder of the meat is prepared for transport back to the settlement. Some is cut into strips that freeze instantly in the cold air, easily carried and consumed during the journey. Some is left in larger pieces that will be further processed at home. Nothing is wasted. The hides will become clothing, the antlers tools, the hooves containers, the sinew thread. This isn't environmental consciousness as a political position. It's the obvious approach in a place where resources are scarce and difficult to obtain. The journey home is long but steady. The frozen meat provides energy along the way, consumed without stopping to make camp or light fires. This isn't convenience food. It's practical nutrition that requires no preparation. The practice of eating frozen food makes this kind of extended hunting possible. No need to carry cooking equipment, no need to stop and prepare meals. Just constant available energy in a form preserved by the natural. Environment. Back at the settlement, the successful hunt is met not with celebration but with practical activity. Everyone helps process the caribou meat, preparing it for immediate consumption and long-term storage. Some is placed in underground caches, where even during the brief summer, the permafrost will keep it frozen. Some is dried or fermented through traditional practices for variety, but much is simply left to freeze naturally, ready to be consumed in the same state. This isn't meal prep as a modern convenience. It's food security in its most fundamental form. The cycle continues, day after day, season after season. Hunting, gathering, processing, consuming. The frozen food remains a constant, not by choice, but by circumstance. At 84-degree Ferb, cooking is often impractical. Thawing completely is unnecessary, and the frozen state preserves food indefinitely without technology. This isn't a lifestyle choice, it's an adaptation to environmental reality. Your body has grown, accustomed to this diet. Your teeth are worn from years of shaving frozen meat. Your digestive system efficiently processes the raw protein and fat. Your metabolism maintains your body temperature using the high caloric intake. These aren't health conditions. They're physical adaptations to your environment and diet. Just as your eyes have adapted to the intense glare of sun on snow, your entire body has adapted to processing food in the form that is most readily available, frozen. The knowledge required to live this way passes from one generation to the next without formal education. Children learn by watching, then by doing under supervision, then by doing independently. There are no textbooks, no certifications, no degrees, just accumulated wisdom transmitted through direct experience. This isn't an educational philosophy. It's knowledge transfer in its most effective form for the circumstances. The practice of eating frozen food is part of this knowledge transmission. Children learn from their earliest years how to safely consume raw, frozen meat, how to shave it properly with their teeth, how to warm just enough in their mouth to swallow it, how to recognize meat that is safe to eat this way. This isn't culinary training. It's survival education. Another day passes, then another. The temperature fluctuates between merely very cold and dangerously, deadly cold. At 84 degrees, the risk of frostbite is immediate and severe. Exposed skin can freeze. In seconds, tissue damage occurring before you even feel pain. You don't venture outside without proper protection. Not because of safety regulations, but because the consequences are obvious and immediate. The frozen food continues to sustain you through these conditions. Your body has learned to extract maximum nutrition from it, your digestive system processing the raw protein efficiently, your metabolism burning the fat for essential heat production. This isn't a specialized diet, it's your normal sustenance. Over time, this practice of consuming frozen food has shaped not just individual bodies, but entire cultures. The Inuit and other Arctic peoples developed sophisticated technologies and techniques for hunting, food preparation, and storage that work within the limitations of their environment. These aren't cultural quirks or interesting anthropological details. They're practical solutions to the challenge of surviving where few humans can. The consumption of frozen food is one such solution. It emerged not from preference, but from practicality. In an environment where temperatures regularly reach 60 degrees, 70 degrees, even 84 degrees, and where fuel for cooking is scarce and precious, eating food in its frozen state simply makes sense. This isn't a cultural tradition maintained for its own sake. It's a practice that continues because the conditions that necessitated it remain unchanged. Your life continues in this rhythm: hunting, gathering, consuming, sleeping. The frozen food you eat isn't remarkable to you. It's simply food in the form most commonly available. You don't think about the adaptations your body has made to process it efficiently, or the cultural practices that have evolved around its consumption. This is simply how life is conducted in a place where the cold is so profound that it shapes every aspect of human activity. Days merge into weeks, weeks into months, months into years. The cycle continues without interruption or alteration. This isn't stagnation, it's stability. The practice of eating frozen food persists not because of resistance to change, but because it remains the most practical approach to nutrition in this environment. This isn't tradition for tradition's sake. It's continuation of what works. Your existence is defined by these practices, these adaptations, these solutions to the challenges of extreme cold. The frozen food you consume is just one element of a comprehensive approach to survival that encompasses every aspect of daily life. From clothing to shelter, from tools to social organization, everything is designed to function within the limitations imposed by temperatures that regularly reach 84 degrees. This isn't suffering or hardship, as you might understand those concepts. From a different perspective, it's simply life as it exists in this place. The cold isn't an enemy to be fought against. It's the context within which all activity occurs. The frozen food isn't a restriction or limitation. It's a practical approach to nutrition in extreme conditions. The cycle continues, day after day, year after year, generation after generation. The knowledge accumulates slowly, tested constantly against the unforgiving standards of the Arctic. Each small innovation, each subtle improvement in technique or technology is incorporated into the existing practices. This isn't progress as a linear trajectory. It's refinement of systems that work. The practice of eating frozen food remains central to this way of life, not as a quaint tradition, but as a practical solution to the challenges of obtaining adequate nutrition in one of Earth's most extreme environments. At 84 degrees, this isn't a dietary choice. It's thermal and biological necessity. Your life continues in this rhythm, shaped by the cold, sustained by frozen food, defined by adaptations both physical and cultural. This isn't an extraordinary existence to you. It's simply life as you know it. The frozen food you consume isn't remarkable or unusual. It's simply food in the form most commonly available. Days pass, seasons change, years accumulate. The cycle continues without drama or complaint. This is simply how things are done in a place where the cold is so profound that it shapes every aspect of human activity. The frozen food you consume isn't a dietary restriction or a cultural preference. It's a logical response to the reality of 84 degrees. Sleep comes easily after another day of hunting, gathering, preparing, consuming. Your body is tired from the constant work of staying warm, of moving through this environment, of processing food that requires effort to consume. You don't set an alarm or worry about getting 8 hours. Your sleeping patterns follow the rhythms of light and dark, of energy and exhaustion. Tomorrow will bring similar activities, similar challenges, similar foods. The frozen meat and fish and blubber will provide the energy needed to survive another day in one of Earth's most extreme environments. This isn't a lifestyle choice. It's adaptation in its purest form. The practice of eating frozen food at 84 degrees isn't cultural or traditional or preferential. It's necessary. It's logical. It's survival. And so the cycle continues without beginning or end, without change or progress as you might understand those concepts from another perspective. Just the ongoing process of existing in conditions humans weren't originally designed to inhabit, sustained by frozen food that provides the energy needed to maintain body temperature against the profound, persistent cold. This isn't extraordinary. It's simply life at 84 degrees. Your eyes grow heavy as sleep approaches. The frozen food you consumed hours ago continues to provide energy, your body burning calories for heat rather than activity as the temperature outside drops further into the night. This isn't rest as leisure. It's recovery for continued survival. Tomorrow will bring another day of hunting, gathering, consuming frozen food, and adapting to one of the most challenging environments on Earth. Not as hardship or suffering, simply as life. The morning comes with a dim, bluish light filtering through the walls of your shelter. Outside, the temperature has stabilized at around 75 degrees. You don't check a thermometer to know this. Your body has become attuned to the subtle differences between various degrees of extreme cold. The way your breath crystallizes, the specific sound of snow underfoot, the feeling on the exposed skin around your eyes. All of these sensations tell you the temperature with reasonable accuracy. This isn't meteorological training. It's environmental literacy developed through constant exposure. Today's first meal is frozen fish, caught days ago and stored in a natural freezer. A hollow dug into the permanent snowbank beside the settlement. You retrieve a portion and begin the familiar process of consumption. The fish is rock solid, preserved perfectly by the constant cold. You don't defrost it or cook it. You consume it in exactly the state nature has presented it. Small shavings, sliced with your front teeth, warmed just enough in your mouth to swallow. The flavor is clean and direct, pure protein with the slight brininess of the sea. There are no spices, no sauces, no accompaniments. Just fish, frozen at the moment of its transition from living creature to human sustenance. This practice of eating frozen food serves multiple functions beyond simple nutrition. The act of shaving thin slices with your teeth actually serves as a form of exercise, maintaining jaw and facial muscle strength. The slow consumption process allows your body to gradually process the nutrients rather than overwhelming your digestive system all at once. This isn't intentional biohacking. It's a natural rhythm that emerged from necessity. After eating, you join others from your community in preparing for a hunt. The caribou herds have been spotted moving across the distant hills, their dark bodies visible against the white landscape. Hunting them will require a journey of several days, careful coordination among multiple hunters, and precise execution of techniques passed down through countless generations. This isn't recreational hunting. It's acquisition of essential resources. Before departing, everyone consumes more frozen meat, energy stores for the demanding days ahead. Some of the older members of the community who will remain behind help prepare additional food supplies to carry. Nothing elaborate or heavy, just strips of frozen meat and fat that can be consumed without preparation. This isn't field rations designed by nutritionists. It's practical, portable energy. The hunting party sets off across the vast whiteness. Movement is steady and efficient, conserving energy while covering distance. Each person walks in the footsteps of the one before, creating a single trail rather than multiple paths. This isn't line formation for aesthetics. It's practical energy conservation, reducing the effort of breaking through snow for all but the lead person, who rotates regularly. Hours pass in steady movement. The temperature remains between 70 degrees Celsius and 80 degrees Celsius. But exertion generates body heat that must be carefully managed. Too much sweat would freeze in your clothing, reducing its insulating properties and potentially leading to hypothermia. Too little exertion would allow your core temperature to drop dangerously low. The pace is calibrated to maintain the optimal balance between movement and heat generation. This isn't calculated with devices or measurements. It's felt through experience. When the hunting party stops for rest, no one sits directly on the snow. Instead, you crouch or stand, preserving body heat. Food is consumed. The frozen meat carried from the settlement, shaved into consumable portions with practiced teeth. Again, no cooking, no preparation. Just nutrition in its most direct form, preserved naturally by the extreme cold. This isn't convenient or inconvenient. It simply is. The hunt continues for days. The caribou are tracked through subtle signs, displaced snow, droppings, shed fur, caught on exposed rock. The hunters move with patience and purpose, never rushing, never allowing frustration or urgency to compromise technique. This isn't Zen philosophy. It's practical hunting methodology in an environment where wasted energy can mean death. When the caribou are finally spotted, the approach is methodical and coordinated. Hunters position themselves according to the terrain, the wind direction, the movement patterns of the herd. No signals are necessary. Everyone understands their role through years of shared experience. This isn't teamwork as a corporate value. It's coordinated survival strategy. The hunt succeeds, and several caribou are taken. Immediately, the process of field dressing begins, even in temperatures approaching 80°C. Hands work quickly despite the cold, using tools designed specifically for this purpose. The internal organs are inspected first. The liver, heart, and kidneys consumed on the spot. These aren't delicacies. They're concentrated nutrition, rich in vitamins that might be lacking in the regular diet. These organs are eaten partially frozen, warm from the recently living animal but rapidly cooling. In the extreme temperatures, the taste is intense and metallic. The texture unlike anything in the modern culinary experience. You don't comment on the flavor or express preferences, you simply consume what is necessary for survival. This isn't gourmand appreciation, it's biological refueling. The rest of the caribou is processed for transport back to the settlement. Some meat is cut into strips that freeze almost instantly upon exposure to the air. Some is left in larger portions to be further processed. Later, the hides are roughly cleaned, the bones collected for tools and implements, the antlers secured for carving. Nothing is left behind except what has no possible use. This isn't environmental ethics. It's resource management in its most fundamental form. The journey back to the settlement is more heavily burdened but proceeds with the same steady efficiency. The frozen meat provides sustenance along the way, consumed in its natural state without preparation. This practice of eating frozen food makes extended hunting expeditions possible, in a way that cooked food would not. No need for fire, no fuel consumption, no time spent in food preparation. This isn't cooking methodology, it's practical nutrition. Upon returning to the settlement, the successful hunt is met with activity rather than celebration. Everyone participates in processing the caribou meat, preparing it for immediate consumption, and long-term storage. Some is placed in stone caches dug into the permafrost, where it will remain frozen indefinitely. Some is hung in the cold air to develop different flavors and textures through controlled exposure. Some is mixed with rendered fat to create pemmican, a concentrated form of nutrition that can sustain life through the longest journeys. This isn't food preparation as cultural expression. It's nutrition science developed through generations of practical experience. The cycle of consumption continues. Each day, frozen meat or fish is retrieved from storage and eaten in its natural state. The body processes this raw protein efficiently, extracting maximum nutrition without the energy expenditure of cooking. This isn't dietary preference. It's caloric economics in an environment where every joule of energy must be carefully managed. As the days pass, you observe subtle changes in the weather patterns. Not warming, exactly, but shifts in the wind direction, changes in cloud formations, differences in snow texture. These aren't weather observations as casual conversation. They're vital readings of environmental conditions that will determine hunting strategies, travel possibilities, shelter requirements. The temperature drops further, approaching 84°C during the night. At this extreme, even breathing requires technique and care. The air is so cold that it can damage lung tissue if inhaled directly. You breathe through a fur-lined face covering that warms the air slightly before it enters your airways. This isn't fashion or comfort, it's respiratory protection. Your diet adjusts slightly with the changing conditions. More fat is consumed during the coldest periods, providing the calories needed to maintain body temperature against the extraordinary differential between your internal 98.6 degrees warm and the external 84 degrees. This isn't dietary preference, it's thermal regulation through nutrition. The frozen food continues to be the foundation of this diet. Meat and fish preserved perfectly by the natural cold, consumed in their frozen state through the technique of shaving thin slices with the front teeth. This practice didn't develop through cultural preference or tradition. It emerged as the logical response to environmental conditions. At temperatures approaching 84 degrees, Cooking is often impractical, requiring precious fuel that might be better used for heat. In the frozen state, food remains preserved indefinitely without technology. The natural freezing kills parasites and bacteria that might otherwise cause illness. The raw state preserves vitamins and nutrients that might be destroyed by cooking. This isn't a lifestyle choice. It's practical adaptation. Your body has adapted to this diet over generations. Your liver efficiently processes the high levels of protein and fat. Your digestive system extracts maximum nutrition from raw meat. Your teeth are adapted to the specific techniques needed to consume frozen food. These aren't genetic quirks. They're evolutionary responses to dietary necessity. Another day begins, indistinguishable from the one before except in the most subtle details. The cold remains constant, not as an enemy to be defeated, but as the context within which all activity occurs. The frozen food continues to provide the energy needed for survival, not as a cultural tradition, but as a practical solution to the challenge of obtaining adequate nutrition in extreme conditions. You join a different kind of hunting expedition. Today, seal hunting at the breathing holes in the sea ice. This technique requires even more patience and precision than caribou hunting. You will sit motionless beside a small hole in the ice where seals come to breathe, waiting for hours or even days for the moment when a seal appears. The harpoon must strike instantly and accurately. This isn't sport or challenge, it's methodical, acquisition of essential resources. Before setting out, you consume more frozen meat. Energy reserves for the long, cold wait ahead. The meat is caribou from the recent hunt, now frozen solid and indistinguishable from meat frozen for months. You don't think about freshness or expiration dates. In this environment, all frozen food remains essentially unchanged indefinitely. The seal hunt requires absolute stillness and silence. You position yourself beside the breathing hole, harpoon ready, and become as motionless as the ice itself. Hours pass without movement. The cold intensifies, but you don't shift position or seek comfort. This isn't stoicism as philosophical position. It's hunting technique in its purest form. Eventually, a seal appears at the breathing hole. The harpoon strikes with precision developed through years of practice. The seal is secured and pulled from the water. Immediately, the process of butchering begins, even in temperatures approaching 70 degrees Celsius. The warm blood freezes almost instantly upon exposure to air, creating strange crystalline patterns on the ice. Some of the meat is consumed on the spot, not quite frozen yet, but rapidly cooling in the extreme cold. This isn't fresh food as culinary preference, it's immediate nutrition. The remainder of the seal is transported back to the settlement for processing. The blubber is particularly valuable, not just as food, but as fuel for the soapstone lamps that provide light and heat in the shelters. The skin will become waterproof clothing or boat coverings. The bones will become tools. This isn't waste reduction as environmental ethic, it's complete utilization of limited resources. Back at the settlement, the seal blubber is rendered into oil. Some is stored for lamp fuel, some is consumed directly, and some is mixed with other foods. The high fat content provides essential calories for survival in extreme cold. This isn't dietary indulgence, it's thermal necessity. The meat is prepared for storage and consumption. Much of it will be eaten in its frozen state, consumed through the familiar technique of shaving thin slices. Some might be aged to develop different flavors and textures. Some might be fermented through traditional practices. These aren't culinary arts for pleasure. They're food preservation techniques developed through generations of practical experience. Evening comes again, and with it another meal of frozen food. The temperature has stabilized around 75 degrees Celsius, not warm by any standard except relative to the 84 degrees extremes sometimes experienced. You don't remark on this slight moderation. Temperature is simply information, not comfort or discomfort. Sleep comes easily after a day of hunting and processing. Your body is tired from the constant work of maintaining temperature and executing complex tasks in extreme conditions. The frozen food you consumed provides the energy needed for your metabolism to continue generating heat through the night. This isn't rest as recreation, it's biological recovery. Morning brings new tasks. Today, you will fish through the ice, cutting holes in the frozen surface of the sea and using bone hooks and sinew lines to catch what swims below. The equipment is simple but perfectly adapted to the purpose. The hooks are carved from bone into shapes proven effective through countless generations of use. The lines are made from braided animal sinew, strong and relatively elastic. The techniques are precise and patient, developed through observation and practice rather than instruction. This isn't sport fishing, it's resource acquisition. When fish are caught, some are consumed immediately. The flesh is eaten partially frozen, just caught but rapidly cooling in the extreme air temperatures. The taste is clean and direct, unaltered by cooking or seasoning. You don't evaluate the flavor as good or bad, it's simply fuel. The remainder of the fish are prepared for storage, placed in snowbanks where they will freeze naturally and remain preserved indefinitely. Some might be stored in specific ways to develop into fermented delicacies like tipliaktuk, a traditional aged fish preparation. These aren't gourmet innovations. They're preservation techniques that also provide variety in a limited diet. The consumption of frozen food continues through all these activities. It's not a single practice, but a spectrum of approaches to nutrition in extreme cold. Sometimes meat is eaten completely frozen, sometimes partially thawed, sometimes aged, sometimes fermented. But always, the underlying principle remains the same: working with the natural conditions rather than fighting against them. This isn't cuisine as cultural expression, it's practical nutrition. Days blend into weeks, weeks into months. The rhythm of life continues without interruption or substantial variation. Hunting, fishing, gathering, processing, consuming, sleeping. This isn't monotony as boredom. It's stability as survival strategy. The frozen food remains central to this way of life, not as a restriction but as a practical solution to the challenge of obtaining adequate nutrition in one of Earth's most extreme environments. At temperatures that regularly reach 70 degree and 80 degree, even 84 degree, this approach to food consumption isn't choice, it's necessity. Your body has adapted to this diet and these conditions. Your metabolism efficiently converts fat to heat. Your digestive system extracts maximum nutrition from raw meat. Your teeth are worn in specific patterns from years of shaving frozen food. These aren't medical conditions. They're physical adaptations to environmental reality. Another season passes. The brief summer brings slightly warmer temperatures, but never true warmth as other climates would define it. The permafrost remains frozen just below the surface. The sea ice retreats slightly but never disappears entirely. Plants emerge briefly, providing rare opportunities for gathering berries, roots, and greens to supplement the diet of meat and fish. These aren't treats or luxuries. They're essential sources of vitamins and nutrients absent from animal products. These plant foods are often consumed fresh rather than frozen, a brief change from the usual practices. But even these are sometimes preserved through drying or mixing with animal fat to create longer-lasting food stores. This isn't culinary variety for pleasure, it's nutritional diversification for health. As temperatures drop again with the advancing season, the practice of consuming frozen food resumes its central place in daily life. Meat and fish, preserved naturally by the cold, eaten in their frozen state through techniques perfected over generations. This isn't dietary restriction, it's practical adaptation. The cycle continues. unchanging yet always subtly different. Each hunt is distinct, each fishing expedition unique, each day a slightly different configuration of the same essential elements: cold, food, shelter, community. This isn't repetition as tedium, it's pattern as security. Your life proceeds within these patterns, defined by the cold, sustained by frozen food, shaped by adaptations both physical and cultural. This isn't an extraordinary existence to you. It's simply life as you know it. The frozen food you consume isn't remarkable or unusual. It's simply food in the form most commonly available. Another morning dawns with temperatures around 78 degrees. The air is absolutely still, creating an intense silence broken only by the occasional crack of ice or the distant call of a raven. These aren't pleasant or unpleasant sounds. They're simply the acoustic environment within which you exist. Breakfast is frozen fish, retrieved from the snowbank where it has been stored for weeks or perhaps months. The passage of time has little effect on frozen food in this environment. There is no spoilage, no degradation, no expiration. What was frozen a year ago remains essentially identical to what was frozen yesterday. This isn't food preservation as technology, it's natural stasis. Today, you will repair hunting equipment in preparation for the next expedition. The tools used for survival in this environment are deceptively simple but perfectly adapted to their purpose. Harpoons with toggling heads that prevent escape after penetration. Spears balanced precisely for throwing across ice. Bows backed with sinew that maintains flexibility even in extreme cold. These aren't primitive technologies. They're refined tools developed through generations of practical testing in the most demanding conditions. As you work, you consume more frozen meat, the energy needed to maintain body temperature while performing detailed tasks with bare hands. Even inside the shelter, the temperature never rises much above freezing. Your fingers remain nimble through adaptation and necessity, not comfort. This isn't craft work as leisure. It's equipment maintenance as survival. The community functions. Around you, each person engaged in essential tasks. Some process animal hides for clothing, some carve bone for tools, some repair sleds or kayaks, some care for children. This isn't division of labor as economic system. It's practical allocation of human resources. The food practices integrate seamlessly into the system. The frozen meat and fish provide consistent energy without requiring significant preparation, time, or resources. This isn't convenience food as modern concept. It's efficient nutrition in an environment where efficiency directly correlates to survival. Evening brings another meal of frozen food, consumed through the familiar technique of shaving thin slices with the front teeth. The flavors vary slightly. Depending on the animal source, seal has a distinct marine quality, caribou a milder taste, fish a cleaner flavor profile. But all are consumed in essentially the same way. All provide the high protein and fat content needed for survival in extreme cold. This isn't dietary monotony, it's nutritional consistency. Sleep comes again, your body exhausted from the constant work of maintaining temperature in an environment that pulls heat away relentlessly. The frozen food you consumed provides the calories needed for this ongoing thermal regulation. This isn't rest as recreation, it's biological recovery. Morning brings temperatures approaching 84°C, the extreme end of even this harsh environment's range. At this temperature, the air itself seems to crystallize, sound travels differently, light refracts in unusual ways. These aren't atmospheric curiosities. They're environmental conditions that directly impact survival strategies. Your consumption of frozen food adjusts slightly to accommodate these extreme conditions. More fat is included, providing higher calorie content for increased heat production. The technique remains the same. Small shavings melted just enough in the mouth to swallow. This isn't dietary preference. It's thermoregulation through nutrition. Days pass in this rhythm, each indistinguishable from the last except in the most subtle details. The temperature fluctuates between very cold and extremely cold. The food varies between different animal sources but remains consistently frozen. The activities shift between hunting, fishing, processing, and preparation. This isn't monotony, it's stability. The practice of eating frozen food continues not because of tradition or habit, but because it remains the most practical approach to nutrition in this environment. At temperatures that regularly reach 84 °C, cooking is often unnecessary and sometimes counterproductive, requiring precious fuel that might be better used for heat or light. The frozen state preserves food indefinitely without technology. The raw state maintains nutritional value that might be lost through cooking. This isn't a cultural quirk, it's practical adaptation. Another hunting expedition forms, this time, focusing on musk oxen spotted in the distance. These massive animals provide enormous nutritional resources if they can be successfully hunted, but they also present significant dangers with their aggressive defensive behaviors. The hunt will require different techniques than those used for caribou or seals. More coordination among multiple hunters, different weapons, different approaches. This isn't hunting as sport, it's methodology adapted to specific prey. Before departing, everyone consumes more frozen meat, energy reserves for the demanding task ahead. The meat is eaten slowly, deliberately, efficiently. Small shavings that provide sustained nutrition without overwhelming the digestive system. This isn't snacking, it's strategic fueling. The hunting party travels across the vast whiteness, moving steadily without haste or delay. The musk oxen are approached with extreme caution, using the terrain for concealment, coordinating movements without verbal communication. When the animals detect the hunters and form their characteristic defensive circle, the approach changes. No longer stealth, but strategic positioning to isolate individual animals from the group. This isn't hunting technique as sport. It's survival strategy refined through generations. The hunt succeeds, and one musk ox is taken. Immediately, the process of field dressing begins, even in temperatures approaching 75 °C. The massive animal is butchered with practiced efficiency. The most valuable parts secured first. The organs for immediate consumption. The choice meat for transport. The hide for future processing. This isn't butchery as trade. It's resource extraction in its most direct form. Some of the meat is consumed on the spot. Not fully frozen yet, but rapidly cooling in the extreme temperatures. The taste is strong and distinctive. The texture dense and fibrous. You don't evaluate these sensory experiences as pleasant or unpleasant. They're simply the characteristics of the food that sustains you. The remainder is prepared for transport back to the settlement. Some is cut into strips that freeze almost instantly in the cold air, easily carried and consumed during the journey. Some is left in larger pieces to be processed further at home. The hide, with its thick insulating fur, is particularly valuable and carefully preserved. This isn't material conservation as environmental ethic. It's complete utilization of scarce resources. Back at the settlement, the successful hunt is met with practical activity rather than celebration. Everyone participates in processing the muskox meat, preparing it for immediate consumption and long-term storage. The hide is scraped and stretched for later use as bedding or clothing. The bones are cleaned for tool making. The sinew is separated for use as thread or cord. This isn't craft making as hobby, it's resource processing as necessity. The cycle of consumption continues. Each day, frozen meat or fish is retrieved from storage and eaten in its natural state. The body processes this raw protein efficiently, extracting maximum nutrition without the energy expenditure of cooking. This isn't dietary preference. It's caloric economics in an environment where every joule of energy must be carefully managed. Your life proceeds. Within these patterns, defined by the cold, sustained by frozen food, shaped by adaptations both physical and cultural. This isn't an extraordinary existence to you. It's simply life as you know it. The frozen food you consume isn't remarkable or unusual. It's simply food in the form most commonly available. Days blend into weeks, weeks into months, months into years. The cycle continues without interruption or alteration. The practice of eating frozen food persists not because of tradition or convention, but because it remains the most practical approach to nutrition in an environment where temperatures regularly reach 84 deciliters to. This isn't cultural identity, it's environmental adaptation. Your body has adjusted to this diet and these conditions over generations. Your metabolic systems process the high-fat content efficiently, using it to maintain body temperature in the extreme cold. Your digestive enzymes are particularly effective at breaking down proteins in their raw state. Even your blood circulation has adapted, allowing for better retention of heat in the extremities. These aren't medical anomalies. They're evolutionary responses to one of the most challenging environments on Earth. The consumption of frozen food continues through all seasons and circumstances, during hunting expeditions, during travel between settlements, during the brief summer and the long winter. It's not a single practice, but a spectrum of approaches to nutrition in extreme cold. Sometimes meat is eaten completely frozen, sometimes partially thawed, sometimes aged, sometimes fermented. But always, the underlying principle remains the same: working with the natural conditions rather than fighting against them. This isn't cuisine as cultural expression. It's practical nutrition. Your life continues in this rhythm, day after day, season after season. The cold remains constant, not as an adversary, but as the context within which all activity occurs. The frozen food continues to provide the energy needed for survival, not as a dietary restriction, but as a practical solution to the challenge of obtaining adequate nutrition in extreme conditions. The practice of eating frozen food at temperatures as low as 84 degrees isn't a choice, it's necessity. It isn't tradition, it's adaptation. It isn't deprivation, it's survival in one of Earth's most challenging environments. This isn't an extraordinary story. It's simply life as it exists, at the extremes of human habitation. Your eyes grow heavy as sleep approaches once more. The frozen food you consumed hours ago continues to provide energy. Your body burning calories for heat rather than activity as the temperature outside drops further into the night. This isn't rest as leisure. It's recovery for continued survival. Tomorrow will bring another day of hunting, gathering, consuming frozen food, and adapting to one of the most challenging environments on Earth. Not as hardship or suffering, simply as life in a place where temperatures regularly reach 84 degrees. And frozen food isn't a choice. It's the only logical approach to nutrition. The morning arrives with a subtle shift in the quality of light through the walls of your shelter. The temperature outside has dropped to 79 degrees during the night. Your first conscious awareness is of the cold, not as discomfort, but as presence. Your breath forms small clouds that briefly hang in the air before dissipating. The floor of your sleeping platform is hard, having refrozen during the night into a surface molded perfectly to your body. These aren't inconveniences. They're the familiar textures of home. Today's first task is checking the fishnets set beneath the ice days ago. You dress in the familiar layers: inner clothing with fur facing inward, middle layer with fur facing outward, outer layer of waterproof seal skin. Your hands are covered with mittens designed to keep the fingers together for maximum heat retention, with only the thumb separate for necessary dexterity. Your feet are protected by boots with multiple layers and insulation that can be removed and dried. This isn't dressing for fashion. It's thermal engineering at its most fundamental. Before heading out, you consume frozen fish from yesterday's catch. The meat is solid, requiring the familiar technique of shaving thin slices with your front teeth. The flavor is clean and direct, the texture firm but yielding as it warms slightly in your mouth. You don't eat quickly or slowly. You eat at precisely the pace that allows for efficient nutrition without wasting energy or creating unnecessary body heat that would lead to sweating and potential later chilling. This isn't mindful eating as wellness practice, it's calibrated consumption for survival. Outside, the world is a study in white and blue. The snow reflects the pale sky, creating a landscape where shadows take on subtle blue tints and distance becomes difficult to judge. Your eyes have adapted to this visual environment over generations, able to detect minute variations in snow texture and subtle changes in terrain that would be invisible to untrained perception. This isn't visual acuity as genetic accident. It's environmental adaptation. The walk to the fishing site takes 20 minutes, moving across the frozen sea ice with practiced efficiency. Each step is placed deliberately, testing the surface before committing weight, listening for the specific sounds that might indicate unsafe ice. This isn't caution as anxiety. It's practical risk assessment. At the fishing hole, you remove the snow covering and begin the process of checking the net. The hole has frozen over with several inches of ice that must be broken through. The tool for this is simple. A piece of antler shaped for the purpose, used with short controlled strikes that break the ice without sending shards into the water below that might tangle in the net. This isn't tool use as technology. It's practical implementation of available materials. The net is pulled up slowly, revealing several fish caught in its webbing. Each is removed carefully, freezing almost instantly upon exposure to the air. There is no need for a cooler or ice chest. The entire environment is a freezer. The fish are secured in a simple bag made from seal skin to be carried back to the settlement. This isn't harvesting as industry. It's food acquisition in its most direct form. On the return journey, you consume a small piece of the freshly caught fish. It's not fully frozen yet, having just been removed from the relatively warmer water below the ice. The texture is different from the fully frozen meat usually eaten, softer, more yielding. The flavor is more immediate, less muted. This isn't cuisine as sensory experience. It's nutritional variety within limited parameters. Back at the settlement, the fish are prepared for storage and consumption. Some will be eaten today, some stored for later use. The storage methods are simple but effective. Placement in snowbanks where the temperature remains consistently below freezing. Arrangement in specific ways to allow for easy retrieval. Occasional rotation to ensure even freezing. This isn't food preservation as technology. It's practical utilization of natural conditions. Other members of the community are engaged in different tasks: repairing hunting equipment, processing animal hides, caring for children, preparing materials for clothing or tools. Everyone contributes, according to ability and circumstance. This isn't labor as economic exchange. It's communal survival strategy. The consumption of frozen food continues throughout the day. Different varieties, fish, seal, caribou, provide different nutritional profiles and flavor experiences within the consistent practice of eating in the frozen state. This isn't diet as restriction. It's practical nutrition in extreme conditions. The temperature drops further as evening approaches, reaching 82 degrees by the time darkness falls completely. Inside your shelter, the soapstone lamp burns with a small controlled flame, providing minimal heat and light. The design is simple but perfectly adapted to its purpose. A shallow dish carved from soft stone, filled with rendered animal fat, with a wick made from moss or cotton grass. The flame can be adjusted by manipulating the position of the wick, allowing for precise control of heat and light output. This isn't interior lighting as ambiance. It's survival technology. Evening brings another meal of frozen meat, consumed through the familiar technique of shaving thin slices. The meat is caribou from a hunt conducted weeks ago, preserved perfectly by the constant cold. The taste is mild and sweet compared to seal or fish, the texture dense and fibrous. You don't evaluate these sensory experiences in terms of preference. They're simply the characteristics of available nutrition. Sleep approaches again. Your body tired from the constant work of maintaining temperature and executing necessary tasks in extreme conditions. The frozen food you consumed provides the energy needed to generate heat through the night. And this isn't rest as recreation. It's biological recovery for continued survival. Morning brings slightly warmer temperatures, only 65 degrees, practically tropical by local standards. You don't remark on this moderation. Temperature is information, not comfort or discomfort. The day's activities will include hunting seals at the breathing holes, a practice requiring extreme patience and precision. Before setting out, you consume more frozen meat, energy stores for the demanding task ahead. The meat is eaten in small quantities, providing sustained nutrition without overwhelming the digestive system. This isn't portion control as dietary discipline. It's strategic energy management. The seal hunt takes place on the sea ice, where cracks and openings allow marine mammals to surface for air. You position yourself beside one such breathing hole, becoming as still and silent as the ice itself. The harpoon is held ready, positioned for instantaneous deployment when a seal appears. This isn't patience as virtue, it's hunting technique. Hours pass without movement. The cold intensifies as you remain motionless, but you don't shift position or seek comfort. Your clothing provides sufficient insulation if you remain still. Movement would generate momentary warmth, but would compromise the hunt and ultimately lead to greater energy expenditure. This isn't stoicism as philosophy, it's practical energy conservation. Eventually, a seal appears at the breathing hole. The harpoon strikes with precision born of practice and necessity. The seal is secured and pulled from the water. Immediately, the process of field dressing begins, even in temperatures approaching 70 degrees Celsius. Some of the meat and organs are consumed on the spot, not fully frozen yet, but rapidly cooling in the extreme air. This isn't fresh food as culinary preference. It's immediate nutritional replenishment. The remainder of the seal is prepared for transport back to the settlement. The blubber is particularly valuable, a concentrated source of calories and essential fatty acids, as well as fuel for lamps. The meat provides protein, the organs vital micronutrients, the skin material for clothing or boats, the bones raw material for tools. This isn't comprehensive utilization as waste reduction philosophy. It's practical resource management in a scarcity environment. Back at the settlement, the seal is processed completely. The blubber is rendered into oil, the meat prepared for storage and consumption, the hide cleaned for later use, the intestines processed for waterproof clothing, the bones cleaned for tool making. Nothing is discarded that has any possible utility. This isn't environmental consciousness, it's survival efficiency. The cycle of frozen food consumption continues. Each meal consists of meat or fish in its frozen state, consumed through techniques, developed over generations and perfected through necessity. This isn't dietary habit. It's practical nutrition in an environment where cooking is often impractical and sometimes counterproductive. Your body has adapted to this diet through both immediate acclimatization and generational evolution. Your digestive system efficiently extracts nutrients from raw protein. Your metabolism effectively converts fat to heat. Your dental structure accommodates the specific techniques needed for consuming frozen meat. These aren't medical conditions. They're adaptive responses to environmental reality. Days pass in this rhythm, each similar to the last in essential elements while unique in specific details. Hunting, gathering, processing, consuming, sleeping. The frozen food remains constant, not through choice, but through practical necessity. At temperatures that regularly reach 84 degrees Celsius, cooking is often unnecessary and sometimes wasteful, requiring precious fuel that might be better used for heat or light. The frozen state preserves food indefinitely without technology. The raw state maintains nutritional value that might be lost through heating. This isn't cultural tradition, it's environmental adaptation. Another hunting expedition forms this, time-tracking polar bears that have been spotted in the distance. Unlike other prey, these animals are both potential food sources and potential predators. The hunt will require different techniques, different weapons, different strategies. This isn't hunting as sport, it's complex resource acquisition in a threat environment. Before departing, everyone consumes frozen meat, energy reserves for the challenging and potentially dangerous task ahead. The meat is eaten in small, efficient portions, providing sustained nutrition without digestive burden. This isn't snacking, it's strategic fueling. The hunting party moves across the vast whiteness with heightened alertness. Polar bears are approached with extreme caution, using terrain features for concealment, monitoring wind direction to prevent detection by scent, maintaining awareness of escape routes if the situation becomes dangerous. This isn't hunting methodology. It's risk management in its most fundamental form. The hunt succeeds, but not without difficulty. One hunter sustains a minor injury during the final confrontation. Immediately, the process of field dressing begins, working quickly but methodically even in temperatures approaching 75 degrees. The most valuable parts are secured first, the organs for immediate consumption, the choice meat for transport, the hide for its exceptional insulating properties. This isn't butchery as process. It's resource extraction under challenging conditions. Some of the meat is consumed on the spot, not fully frozen yet, but rapidly cooling. The taste is strong and distinctive, the fat content higher than in most other game. You don't evaluate these characteristics as positive or negative. They're simply the nutritional profile of the food that sustains you. The injured hunter is tended to with practical efficiency. The wound is cleaned with snow, packed with moss that has natural antibacterial properties, and bound with strips of clean hide. There is no antiseptic, no commercial bandages, no prescription medications. Just traditional materials with properties developed through generations of observational medicine. This isn't healthcare as system, it's practical wound management. The journey back to the settlement is slower due to the injury and the heavy load of meat and hide. The frozen meat carried from home provides energy along the way, consumed without preparation or cooking. This isn't convenience food as modern concept. It's practical nutrition that requires no additional resources to prepare. Back at the settlement, the successful hunt is met with activity rather than celebration. Everyone participates in processing the bear meat, preparing it for immediate consumption and long-term storage. The hide is stretched for later preparation, a process that will take weeks of scraping and treating to create a valuable item for bedding or trade. This isn't craft as hobby, it's material processing as necessity. The injured hunter is cared for by the community. Additional treatments are applied to the wound. Poultices made from local plants with medicinal properties. Coverings designed to keep the area clean while allowing necessary air circulation. There are no antibiotics, no professional medical facilities, no sick leave, just practical care based on generations of accumulated knowledge. This isn't healthcare as institution, it's community support for mutual survival. The cycle of frozen food consumption continues through this situation and all others. Each day, meat or fish in the frozen state provides the nutrition needed for survival in extreme conditions. This isn't dietary preference. It's practical adaptation to an environment where temperatures regularly reach 84 degrees. Days blend into weeks, weeks into months. The rhythm of life continues without interruption or substantial variation. Hunting, fishing, gathering, processing, consuming, sleeping. This isn't monotony. It's stability in an environment where change often represents danger. The practice of eating frozen food persists through these cycles not because of tradition or cultural identity, but because it remains the most practical approach to nutrition in extreme cold. At temperatures approaching 84 dig, this isn't a choice. It's the only logical methodology for sustained survival. Your body has adjusted to this diet over generations of adaptation. Your metabolic systems process the high protein and fat content efficiently. Your digestive enzymes are particularly effective at breaking down raw meat. Your circulation patterns optimize heat retention in vital organs while allowing controlled cooling of extremities when necessary. These aren't medical curiosities. They're evolutionary responses to environmental pressures. Another day begins, indistinguishable from the one before except in the most subtle details. The temperature hovers around 70 degrees, cold by any standard except relative to the 84 degrees. Extremes sometimes experienced. You don't remark on this moderation. Temperature is context, not comfort. Today's activities include ice fishing, cutting holes through thick sea ice to access the marine life below. The tools are simple but perfectly adapted to their purpose. A chisel made from antler or bone, hardened through specific heat treatment techniques. A scoop carved from bone to remove ice fragments from the hole. A line made from braided sinew. Hooks crafted from bone or ivory. Bait taken from the stomach contents of previously caught fish because nothing is wasted. These aren't primitive technologies. They're refined tools developed through generations of practical testing. The fishing is successful, yielding several specimens of different species. Each is pulled from the water and freezes almost instantly in the extreme air temperature. There is no need for ice or refrigeration. The entire environment is a freezer. The fish are secured in a simple carrier made from seal skin to be transported back to the settlement. This isn't harvesting as industry. It's food acquisition in its most direct form. Some of the fish are consumed on the spot, not fully frozen yet, but rapidly cooling. The taste varies by species. Some mild, some stronger, some with higher fat content, some leaner. These variations provide different nutritional profiles and subtle flavor experiences within the consistent practice of eating in the essentially raw state. This isn't cuisine as cultural expression. It's practical nutrition with natural variation. Back at the settlement, the fish are prepared for storage and consumption. Some will be eaten today, some stored for later use in the natural freezer of the environment. Some might be processed in specific ways to develop different textures and flavors, drying in the cold air, fermenting in controlled conditions, mixing with rendered fat for different nutritional profiles. These aren't culinary arts. They're food preservation techniques developed through necessity. The consumption of frozen food continues throughout all these activities and situations. It's not a single practice, but a spectrum of approaches to nutrition in extreme cold. Sometimes meat is eaten completely frozen, sometimes partially thawed, sometimes aged, sometimes fermented. But always, the underlying principle remains the same: working with the natural conditions rather than fighting against them. This isn't cuisine as preference. It's practical nutrition. Your life proceeds within these patterns defined by the cold, sustained by frozen food, shaped by adaptations both physical and cultural. This isn't an extraordinary existence to you. It's simply life as you know it. The frozen food you consume isn't remarkable or unusual. It's simply food in the form most commonly available in an environment where temperatures regularly reach 84 degrees. Days pass in this rhythm, each similar to the last in essential respects, while unique in specific details. The cold remains constant, not as adversary, but as context. The frozen food continues to provide the energy needed for survival, not as dietary restriction, but as practical solution to the challenge of obtaining adequate nutrition in extreme conditions. Evening brings another meal of frozen meat, consumed through the familiar technique of shaving thin slices with the front teeth. The meat is seal from a hunt conducted days ago, preserved perfectly by the constant cold. The taste is rich and distinctive, carrying hints of the marine environment where the animal lived. You don't evaluate this flavor as pleasant or unpleasant. It's simply the characteristic of available nutrition. Sleep approaches. Your body, tired from the constant work of maintaining temperature and executing necessary tasks in extreme conditions. The frozen food you consumed provides the energy needed for your metabolism to continue generating heat through the night. This isn't rest as recreation. It's biological recovery for continued survival. Morning comes with a slight warming trend. Temperatures only around 60-degree fix. Mild by local standards, though still deadly to the unprepared. You don't celebrate this moderation. Temperature is information, not emotion. The day's activities will include traveling to another settlement several miles distant for trading and social exchange. Before setting out, you consume frozen meat, energy reserves for the journey ahead. The meat is eaten in small, efficient portions, providing sustained nutrition without digestive burden. This isn't meal planning. It's practical fueling for physical exertion. The journey takes several hours, moving across the vast whiteness with steady, efficient stride. The route follows subtle landmarks recognizable only to experienced eyes. A particular configuration of snow drifts, the specific shape of ice formations, the barely visible tracks of animals that habitually use certain paths. There are no signs, no maps, no GPS coordinates, just environmental literacy developed through generations of observation and transmission. This isn't navigation as technology, it's practical wayfinding. At the other settlement, you exchange items with residents, specific tools that your community produces, certain animal products from your hunting territories, particular craft, items made by skilled individuals. In return, you receive different tools, materials not available in your immediate area, food items from different hunting or gathering grounds. This isn't commerce as economic system. It's resource distribution through social networks. The frozen food practice continues even in this social context. Meals shared with the other community consist of various meats in their frozen state, consumed through the familiar techniques. Different communities might have slightly different approaches, preferred animals based on local availability, specific aging techniques for particular flavors, various methods of preparation. But the fundamental practice remains the same: consumption of food in its frozen state as the practical approach to nutrition in extreme cold. This isn't cultural uniformity, it's convergent adaptation to similar environmental conditions. The return journey begins late in the day, the temperature dropping as darkness approaches. By the time you reach your settlement, the air has cooled to 75 degrees. Inside your shelter, the soapstone lamp provides minimal heat and light. The frozen food you brought with you provides the energy needed for recovery from the journey. This isn't comfort food as emotional support, it's practical replenishment of expended energy. Sleep comes easily after the long day of travel. Your body is tired from the physical exertion and the constant work of maintaining temperature in extreme conditions. The frozen food you consumed provides the calories needed for your metabolism to continue generating heat through the night. This isn't rest as leisure, it's biological recovery. Morning brings new tasks and responsibilities. Today, you will process animal hides, scraping, stretching, treating with natural compounds that preserve flexibility and waterproof properties. The tools are simple but perfectly adapted to their purpose. Scrapers made from bone or antler, frames constructed from driftwood or bone for stretching, solutions prepared from animal brains or other natural materials for treating. These aren't primitive technologies. They're refined processes developed through generations of practical testing. As you work, you consume frozen meat, energy for the demanding physical tasks. The meat is eaten in small quantities throughout the day rather than in designated meal times. This isn't snacking as modern concept. It's practical energy management for sustained activity. The processing of animal hides is essential for survival in this environment. The resulting materials will become clothing, shelter components, containers, boat coverings. Without properly prepared hides, existence in extreme cold would be impossible. This isn't craft as hobby. It's material engineering for survival. Evening brings another meal of frozen food, consumed through the familiar technique of shaving thin slices. The food varies in type: fish, seal, caribou, providing different nutritional profiles and subtle flavor experiences. You don't evaluate these differences in terms of preference. They're simply variations in available sustenance. Sleep approaches once more, your body tired from the day's work. The frozen food you consumed provides the energy needed for your metabolism to maintain temperature through the night. This isn't rest as concept. It's biological necessity. The cycle continues, day after day, season after season. The practice of eating frozen food persists not because of tradition or cultural identity, but because it remains the most practical approach to nutrition in an environment where temperatures regularly reach 4 degrees. This isn't a lifestyle choice. It's the only logical methodology for sustained survival. Your life proceeds within these patterns, defined by the cold, sustained by frozen food, shaped by adaptations both physical and cultural. This isn't an extraordinary existence. It's simply life as you know it. The frozen food you consume isn't remarkable or unusual. It's simply food in the form most readily available and practically consumed in extreme cold. Another day begins, the temperature dropping to near 80 degrees as a weather system moves through the area. You read the signs in the sky, the specific patterns of cloud formation, the particular quality of light, the subtle change in how sound travels through the air. These aren't meteorological observations as science. They're practical assessments of environmental conditions that will determine the day's activities. Today's tasks include gathering ice for drinking water. Though surrounded by frozen water in the form of snow and ice, not all sources are suitable for consumption. Sea ice contains salt. Some snow formations collect impurities. Certain ice formations develop particular mineral concentrations. You select specific sources known to produce clean water when melted. This isn't hydrology as academic discipline, it's practical water sourcing. The ice is collected using simple tools: a chisel for breaking manageable pieces, a carrier made from sealskin for transport. Back at the settlement, some will be melted for immediate consumption using body heat or the minimal warmth of the soapstone lamp. Some will be stored for later use. This isn't water management as utility service. It's practical hydration in extreme conditions. Throughout these activities, the consumption of frozen food continues. Meat or fish in the frozen state provides the energy needed for physical exertion and temperature maintenance. This isn't dietary habit. It's practical nutrition in an environment where cooking is often unnecessary and sometimes counterproductive. The day proceeds with various other tasks: preparing tools, preparing materials for clothing, maintaining the structure of your shelter. All are performed with the same practical efficiency, the same economy of movement and resource use. Nothing is wasted. Not materials, not energy, not time. This isn't conservation as philosophy. It's practical resource management in a scarcity environment. Evening brings another meal of frozen meat consumed through the familiar technique. The meat is caribou from a hunt conducted weeks ago, preserved perfectly by the constant cold. The taste is mild compared to seal or certain fish species, the texture dense and fibrous. You don't evaluate these sensory experiences in terms of preference. They're simply the characteristics of available nutrition. Sleep comes again, your body exhausted from the constant work of maintaining temperature and performing necessary tasks in extreme conditions. The frozen food you consumed provides the energy needed for your metabolism to continue generating heat through the night. This isn't rest as concept, it's a biological recovery for continued existence. Morning brings temperatures approaching. 84 Klingmanv. The extreme end of even this harsh environment's range. At this temperature, the air itself seems to solidify. Sound travels with strange clarity. Light refracts in unusual ways, creating subtle halos and illusions. These aren't atmospheric curiosities. They're environmental conditions that directly impact survival strategies. The practice of eating frozen food becomes even more practically necessary at these extreme temperatures. Cooking would require precious fuel that is better used for the minimal heat and light provided by the soapstone lamp. Fully thawing food would waste body energy that is needed for core temperature maintenance. The technique of shaving thin slices that warm just enough in the mouth for swallowing represents the perfect balance between nutritional access and energy conservation. This isn't dietary preference, it's thermal efficiency. Your life continues in this balance, day after day, season after season. The cold remains the constant context, not as hardship, but as reality. The frozen food provides the energy needed for survival, not as restriction, but as practical solution. This isn't suffering. It's adaptation to conditions that would be unbearable without the specific practices and technologies developed over generations of experience. The cycle continues, unchanging yet always subtly different. Each hunt is unique, each fishing expedition distinct, each day a slightly different configuration of the same essential elements: cold, food, shelter, community. This isn't repetition as tedium, it's pattern as security. Evening brings another meal of frozen food, consumed with the same practical efficiency that characterizes all activities in this environment. Nothing is wasted. Not food, not energy, not motion. Each bite is small and deliberate, providing nutrition without overwhelming the digestive system. This isn't mindful eating as wellness practice, it's calibrated consumption for survival. Sleep approaches once more. Your body tired from the constant work of existing in extreme cold. The frozen food you consumed provides the energy needed for your metabolism to maintain temperature through the night. This isn't rest as recreation. It's biological recovery for continued survival in an environment where temperatures regularly reach 84 Celsius. And frozen food isn't a choice. It's the only logical approach to nutrition. Your eyes grow heavy as the minimal light from the soapstone lamp casts soft shadows on the walls of your shelter. The world outside is cold beyond most human comprehension, but inside, your body generates enough heat to sustain life through the long night ahead. The frozen food you consumed hours ago fuels this essential process, providing the energy needed for mere existence in extreme conditions. This isn't comfort or discomfort. It's simply survival at 84 Celsius, where eating frozen food isn't cultural practice or dietary preference. It's the practical reality of human adaptation to one of Earth's most challenging environments.